The sponsor of this episode is Chadwell Supply, an OG in the multifamily industry. Chadwell Supply is the largest privately owned maintenance and repair supplier, and they deliver orders the next day from local warehouses across the United States. To find out how Chadwell Supply will make your day better, visit www.chadwellsupply.com/difference.
Episode of 8 Stories, brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network. I'm Sharon Cauthen, and this is my co-host, Jennifer Carter. And today we have some really interesting stories to go over. I'm excited about them. We're going to go back to school. We're going to hug a puppy. And we have a few other things to learn about sort of the hospitality world. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us over to Jennifer for our first story. But first, we'll take a little break and hear a bit from our sponsor. All right, Jennifer. So you wrote an article recently about elevating multifamily living sort of on a hospitality model. So I'm really interested in learning more about that. I think we were going to start with this idea of contactless check-in or mobile check-in.
Yeah, I think and feel like our industry can tend to be a little bit behind, right? In some areas, but I always look to hospitality because I feel like they are maybe a step ahead or they, do some really cool things when it comes to the hotel industry. And what is that? What can we gather from that? Um, you know, uh, that arena that we can take in and kind of go and use in our model or in our industry. So ultimately, the first one, like you mentioned, was contactless and mobile check-in. And so with that, from a travel industry perspective, the trend is, you can go into your app before you even get there. You can check in, go straight to your room. You can have your digital key. You can even pick your floor and your apartment, your hotel room number. But then I thought about how do you really change that into multifamily, right? How can we take that? And really, my thought on this when I was kind of thinking through these different trends and how we can relate to us is what if we did the same thing in our industry? What if we allowed our residents to have a mobile or contactless check-in, or again, it's the option or offering to not have to see somebody. Not everybody will take that, and that's okay. But what if you did offer the option for them to just check in, have a great experience? Especially because moving days stressful, right? You got the truck and you're moving and trying to coordinate people and furniture and it just became a frictionless experience where they could check in and not really have to like sign anything or just have a smooth move in. So I know some people might be there already, but it is something I think to consider from an industry that's already kind of doing that. What do you think?
I love the idea. And I think about how often something goes wrong with the truck or your movers get there late and you're stressed trying to get to the property before they close so you can sign all this paperwork. And so we force people's move-ins to happen within the hours that we're available. But this would
Yes.
give people a broader range. They could come earlier or later to get moved in. And I can only imagine that there could be a way people are going to say, but what about us explaining the lease? Well, we could still manage to pop out. These are the most important things that you need to know. Here's your full lease agreement, but these are the hot topics, the big bullet point.
I agree because I mean ultimately when you're signing and doing a hotel, you have rules and regulations for a lack of a better word, right? Like you've got all that. Like that's there. It says if you don't check in 24 hours in advance, you're going to be charged, right? There's things that are there. So I agree with you on that one. But yeah, so we'll go to the next one, which some people have been and I've been seeing this a little bit more and more, but is a lobby grab and go.
Yeah.
Hotels do a great job of this from the ability to have quick service. If you've got an empty place in your leasing office, doing a quick service kind of feel. There's a company out there called Impulsify. I think they actually started in the hotel industry, but they do and have done several communities that I've seen online and have the option for residents to have something at their convenience, right? Grab and go food, paper towels, cleaner, toilet paper. It just creates the ability to have a community and a chance really for even, on-site team members to have the ability to connect with residents coming in for, something quick. should they need that. But I think it's a great added convenience because you always need something last minute.
Well, and I can't tell you how many times when I travel that I am a customer of the grab and go because there's not always a convenience store nearby, and especially if you're at a conference and you're just trying to get back to your room, but you still would like to have a snack to take
Yep.
back with you. So I've done it
Yep.
many times, and I know that you travel a lot for speaking all over the country, and so I imagine you've gotten to experience a lot of these hotel trends that we're talking about that could move over into the multifamily space, could migrate over into our world.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I think if everybody were to take a minute and just think about their experience in the hotel world, that we could take a trend or two, right? And it wouldn't really be hard. I mean, really, the grab and go, to be honest with you, is one you can also make money on, right? It's also revenue
Right.
generating. So, you kind of a twofold there. But I mean, you look at the opportunity. We always do a grab and go breakfast. It's like an old school thing, right? But what if you elevated that and or gave a moving gift of $10 to the grab and go where they can come
Whoa,
and
that's a
grab
good idea.
something. I think that's a great idea too.
So on story number three, labeled this personalization. So I'd like to know, how would you define personalization in hotel, and how can we use that?
I think when I saw this, because I do think you're right, personalization has kind of been a word that people have been throwing around a lot. What I think hotels do really well at when it comes to personalization is they're collecting the data about the guest. But the second part, which is the most important part, is using that data, right? To create a better personalized guest experience. So I think that's what it comes down to is really using the data on what they find about their guest, right? And what are those data points? How can you create a more tailored experience? I mean, these days you can find anything and anything about somebody. It's kind of scary, right? But if we use that to create a better experience, I think that sets especially new move-ins up for, maybe that's, trust, transparency. Maybe that's thinking about even already starting to renew, having that great move-in experience. So some of the things I took to that is, if your data on your prospects and residents, you could even do a quick move-in questionnaire, old school, if you don't have the software kind of set up. But if a good example would be, let's just say you purchased a 32-inch TV and you set that up in the home for the resident that's moving in. 32-inch TVs are like under $100 probably now,
Right.
right? And you personalize that on the screen with guest likes for what they move in at their move in time. And it made me think about in Vegas, I think it was OpTech last year. I walked in and it had my name on the screen, right? And it had, I don't know, some other personal things about me. And that was super cool. I mean, I think one of them was more about gambling, but like, I mean, I'm not a huge gambler. I play a slot or two, but I think that kind of made me think about what can we do to create something that's very customizable. And then you let them have the TV. I mean, it's 100
Of
bucks,
course.
right? Like, not a big deal. What if they moved in and you had something really specific, like don't do the generic stuff, right? Or what if, nowadays, I think actually it's still in Vegas the last time I was there, you had kind of like an Alexa and it's an in-room tablet. Actually, as a matter of fact, it was. I couldn't find the remote, okay? And it was on a tablet. That's how you change the TV. And it had all my information about me on there.
Wow.
And it's a software called Crave is what they use. But really, ultimately, then you get your guests interacting and they can even talk and communicate with somebody that's on site, right? So it creates a better, seamless experience where somebody's available, maybe during their move in or in the future. So anytime you can use the data to really turn around and make it personal, I think it's beneficial.
When I think about that, I think hotels have their customers for a couple of nights, 2 or 3 nights, unless you're
Yeah.
a family on vacation. And so if they can manage that with the kind of turnover that they have, hundreds and hundreds of
Mm,
turnovers, then we should be able to. We have our customers for a much longer period.
yeah.
We really should be able to execute on something to do with personalization.
hmm Yep. Because I mean, there's even softwares out there that I know this from the sales perspective, but is you can find information out about somebody, and then you can find out what they like. Let's just say they really like cats, and so you send them something that's about cat. I hate cats, but great example. Yeah, you send them something really tailored to the fact that they like cats as a salesperson, and you mail that to them, and it becomes very personal, right? As is very generic. So again, there's ways you can collect the data, but it's all about using the data. Don't just collect and not do anything with it, right?
Right.
It's that second step of doing something with it. So I think that's something we can all be better at to create a better experience
And there's more
for
and more
our
that we can do with software that makes it painless to do it. We're not adding hours and hours worth of tasks.
right.
Well, I think
Exactly.
that's something that you can make people really appreciate it while also being respectful.
Yes, meeting them there, kind of where they're at, right? Which is what I always say. So I love that.
Some people are going to be like, "You have all of my information," but they already do. You gave them your credit card and your name and
Yep,
your address and your tag number. You gave them all that.
that's right.
And most of the
That's,
time, you've told them why you're traveling. Is it for work? Is it for pleasure?
you're right.
So they
You're
have a
right.
lot of information already.
Mm-hmm.
Well, moving on
Exactly.
to the fourth one is a topic called coffee culture.
Coffee. That's right.
Yes, I'm here with you right now.
Uh, yeah, there's so many coffee connoisseurs out there, right? I think coffee has become a common language, right? It's a community. It's everybody loves it to some degree. And again, it can even be tea. It can be some kind of refreshers. It's a commonality, right? For
Mhm.
some folks. So there was reading in these trends about what does that coffee culture look like, and a lot of times when you go to hotels, there's all these little coffee kind of boutique locations, whether it's in the hotel or nearby. And I thought, well, wow, what could we do as an industry kind of along the lines of coffee? Now there's a lot of coffee bars, or you set up your free coffee, kind of old school, right?
Right.
But if you were to raise that bar, if you wish, and create a new experience, what could that look like, right? They're not just renting the four walls, but what if you also had a coffee bar where you actually had somebody come by and like brew, or you had, there's a lot of coffee boutiques and they brought their coffee in and it was like a coffee tasting, or you created the opportunity for community through coffee, and maybe that's giving away a bag of coffee, right, or a gift card to coffee. I just feel like everybody loves a good cup of coffee and would come out of their house or their apartment to come get a good morning cup of warm coffee, and start trying something different, or you know that's out there, might drive community and elevating that. So it's not just a coffee pot, right? There's something else that you can come down and do besides just getting a free cup of 8 ounce of coffee, or from a Keurig.
Yeah, I think the coffee pot is long gone.
Yeah.
And I've seen properties where they've really got so much more. It's a whole machine where you can get any kind of latte, cappuccino, coffee, whatever you want. This machine spits it out for you. But wouldn't, even in a place like that, wouldn't it be nice to say, this is the flavor of the week or the flavor of the day
Hmm.
that people really connect with what they're actually drinking is more than a warm cup of coffee. I really like the flavor of this one. Tell us, give us your feedback. Which was your
Yeah.
favorite? We'll have it again. So I think there's a lot to be said for elevating, really thinking about coffee in a fresh way.
Yeah. Yeah. Fresh coffee.
Fresh coffee. Yes, when we were in Philadelphia, I found some coffee and gave it to Mike Brewer because nobody drinks more coffee than Mike Brewer.
That's
And
true.
he did a coffee review, and it only sadly scored a 6.5. So
Oh,
on the mic meter, it was like wah, wah, medium.
well, that's a great point though, Sharon, right? Like people will drink coffee and then rate it, right? And
Right,
so what if you offered once a week the opportunity for somebody from a local coffee shop to come in and, kind of do a coffee tasting, right?
right.
From that. There's a lot of things that you can, excuse me, to your point, elevate, right? Whether that's teas in the afternoon. I love a good boutique coffee, right?
Mhm.
I'll do the whole Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks, but typically when I travel, I like to try different stuff, and different experiences. So I think there's a lot we can do around the coffee and the coffee culture that's out there.
Well, and the other thing that it brings to mind is the idea of people sitting down and having an opportunity to meet their neighbors, to chat. I like the idea of having a coffee house come in and, let them sponsor it. But I even more love that this is more than coffee. This is content. This is an
Yeah.
opportunity for your residents to go onto your Facebook page and vote for which coffee they like the best, or really engage with you in that way. So it's a win-win-win just all over the place. It's hard to lose when you've got good coffee.
Yeah, and to your point, it makes me kind of think of also doing like three different coffees and coming down and trying them and guessing, right? And like
Mhm.
just getting creative and even more to your point, I think about all the social and the Instagram of, each person in the office trying a different type of coffee, right? And what is that? What do you think, right? So there's a lot you can do, I think around that. And again, I think and maybe you can win a bag of coffee, Oh, who wouldn't love that? Chadwell Supply is the proud sponsor of Multifamily Media Network. Chadwell Supply is the largest privately owned MRO supply company and is committed to the multifamily industry. They deliver orders the next day from local warehouses across the United States. Chadwell Supply offers valuable resources such as maintenance training, a dedicated renovations team, and procurement platform assistance, ensuring multifamily properties operate more efficiently. Now, by partnering with Chadwell Supply, they'll help communities rather stand out in an increasingly competitive market. So learn more at chadwellsupply.com/difference.
Well, if any of our listeners or viewers are doing really interesting things around coffee culture, we'd love to hear about that. So leave us notes in the comments below. We really love hearing your feedback, and we may incorporate it in a future episode. But we're going to take a tiny coffee break so that we can hear from our sponsor, and then we'll be right back. Okay, Jennifer, welcome back. Now we are on story number 5. And this is
Yes.
something that's been around for a while, but I suspect you've got a little more to say on the topic of the rise of influencer.
I do. You're right. And this one has been around, and I think it will still continue. But really, social media profiles really aren't just racking up likes, right? They're earning income by posting advertisements as marketing partners, hotels, airlines. I mean, anything really in that travel industry. There's one influencer app that you may want to try, even. It's called Cameo, Cameo. And you may, again, want to try it because ultimately you can hire celebs like Snoop Dogg, um, who was just on the Olympics, to make personal videos, right? So you may want to find somebody that's a little more well known to resonate, but it's really out with the Craigslist, out with the marketplace, and in with influencers, right? Big businesses are doing it. There's no reason why our industry can't do that either. Because again, residents and prospects are looking for validation. And I think that's what it comes down to, right? Is making sure that they feel like they're making good choices and what they see online is true. So ultimately, making sure that um, whether that's using somebody local or you look at your residents who have a great following, there is a couple of different sites that are out there that you can find some well populated influencers that are out there and they really don't ask for that much, right? But I
Right.
think,
Snoop Dogg might be out of your budget, but you
yeah,
may be able to get a reality star that's sort of getting a lot of attention right now, but they're not at the pinnacle of, they'll have a flash in the pan, but it still gets people's attention and it still feels special. I mean, I don't know what apartments.com pays Jeff Goldblum, but he's probably out of our reach also.
yeah, yeah. Well, there was in speaking of kind of influencer or social media, right? In my where I live, the downtown, they're building a new 4-story parking deck. Which grateful for the parking, but they actually went out and submitted influencers who can actually draw and make and designs on the side of the deck, right? So they were out seeking those influencers that are able to do that and then being able to drive social media opportunities. So think less big box and maybe more, boutique, less cookie cutter and more customized, is what I would say.
I love it. I do think that it feels a little daunting, the idea of finding an influencer. But I like the idea of start at home. See amongst your residents, is there anybody who's really got big numbers? Because they already are invested in your community.
That's right. That's right. Yep,
Yep. Yeah,
exactly.
that
So,
might be a good place to start.
and the other thing too is look at your local businesses, right? Look at your neighborhoods. Look at some of those folks that you might be able to team up with, even,
Hmm.
and do some collaborations. Really getting into, partnering with other folks. Don't think you're on an island, right? I think is kind of the thing there. But yeah, think about other folks that can help influence. the decisions of residents and prospects and what they're choosing to do.
I agree completely. Okay, so we're going to move on to what I think is story number 6. Today, we are filming this on August the 1st of 2024, which is a wonderful day because it is back to school day. Oh, I know Jennifer has 2 young kids. She's excited to have them
Uh,
back in school. I
I
have a young
am.
child. I was excited to see her little back to school photos this morning. And yeah, it's a time when your morning is a little hectic, but after that, it's your own.
You said it very well. You said it very well. And I do. Yeah, it's bittersweet, but I always use this time and I think everybody can kind of use this time to reset, right? As a property, as personally. We also, tend to in our industry start going into budget season, right? So we're kind of also thinking resetting. But I'm using this time to reset, refocus, realign, almost like another New Year's, right? Kind of halfway into the year or a little more, but ultimately getting kind of readjusted. And I think properties and on-site team members can do the same, right? The seasons are hopefully going to change soon, and it gives us an opportunity to take a deep breath and think about the strategy for the rest of the year before we start off and kick off a new year.
Well, and properties have also unique challenges that come with back to school because you have a ton of kids waiting for the bus, dropping
Yes.
candy wrappers and debris. So you have to switch up your routine a little bit to sort of clear the decks after they've gotten on the bus. But, families are here to stay and we embrace that. And so we just have to really revamp our morning routines to make sure, morning and afternoon, to make sure we're keeping the property as pristine as possible.
Yeah, that's great. I didn't think about when you said that. I thought about, oh, less people in the pool, right? But maybe kids after school, right? To your point, getting off the bus and maybe they're on the playground or walking around. So it is a good kind of way to reset and readjust to what's happening at the property or what you're doing on a daily basis. So that's
Still
a
very
great
much
reminder.
summer in the South.
Yeah.
And yeah, people will still get in the pool in the afternoons. But I think there's a way to make back to school a great time. And school has started now, but I've worked at many properties and seen many properties who collect back to school supplies. So if
Mm,
there's anyone who has a need, they're able to help with that. Or even in a property that where there's not a need, to invite the residents to participate in a drive for back to school supplies that can be donated.
yeah, for sure.
So there's a lot of good things that can be done around back to school. But for all you moms and dads out there who had kids get on the bus this morning, I salute you. Welcome to the fall.
Yes.
It gets a little crazy in some areas, but for those of us who work at home, it means you can have a quiet hour to be on a conference call without.
It, it means I can have a hot cup of coffee.
Well, I'm going to move on to the next story. And this has to do with a blog that Suzanne Hobson wrote. And I loved it. First, I'm a sucker for the title, which is Hug Your Puppy. And Suzanne, this blog is available on the Multifamily Media Network's website, so you can read it. But what it's really about is the dangers of being a people pleaser. And I'm someone who really struggled with being a people pleaser for a long, long time in my life without realizing the cost that it took from me. Because when you're a people pleaser, you're constantly putting your energies into other people, but they're not always putting their energies into you. And so if you're doing it just in the hope that someone will, you have to really evaluate those relationships to see, are they reciprocal relationships? Are you always the one scurrying around trying to shore up the relationship? And she writes about it really well in that blog post. So I would encourage people to check out Hug Your Puppy. And then when you can, hug your puppy.
I love it. I will do that for sure.
Is that
Uh,
something you've ever dealt with? And was being a people pleaser ever a struggle for you?
Yeah, and it's funny, I brought a quote and I can't remember it exactly the full quote itself, but when you said meet people where they're at, the quote basically was like don't overdo it, right? Like don't take 3 steps when maybe you only need 2, right? So I am quickly learning that's for sure.
But just exhausts you after a while.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Can't have that.
Well, we're going to move on to, I think, our last story of the day. But we've got 2 topics that we're going to cover in this one.
Yes. This is
And
exciting.
I'm so excited about this because, as you know, the Multifamily Media Network continues to grow, and we have added two new podcast hosts and with two new shows to our network. And the first one is Ed Nishai, and his podcast is called Building Blocks, right?
Yep, that's
And
right.
his first episode just dropped, and it was a really fascinating episode about um, how you make your move-in special offer, right? So if everybody on your block is doing 1 month free, what can you do that is a real
Mm,
differentiator? And it is full of ideas. So if you're out there in a soft market and you're struggling to differentiate yourself from the other people who are all just giving away the same month or 2 months free, you will walk away from this episode full of fresh ideas and be the first ones to it, because don't let your neighbors be the first ones to it. 'Cause
I think he talks also about stacking specials, right? I think that's
he
was one of
does.
those other things was stacking specials. So it's a really great one. Sam Wynn joins him, who is with Rent. He used to be with Cardinal Agency 53. And it is really kind of, to your point, really packed full of information, which I think will be super helpful because I have seen many folks out there most recently saying, "What can I do to stand out in this kind of soft market, if you wish."
Yeah, he gives a lot of great ideas that I think it's really about making special move-ins as much as it is about move-in specials.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
So these types of giveaways or ways of stacking the offer let you think about, how does the offer benefit us and the resident now, and how does it help us retain the resident? And one of the ones that comes to mind had to do with creating a lifestyle that would be hard to leave. So
I-
if
Yeah.
your property, for example, is not, there's no close grocery store, he recommended giving them the gift of one of the many food service, like, one of all the different places that will deliver you chef's meals in a box these
Oh,
days.
I love that.
Right? So it's just, they're not having to pay DoorDash. They're just instantly, it's part of their life experience here. And then there were other things they did that really anchored them to the community, so that when it's time to move or to renew, you really love your local coffee shop because you did get a membership there as well for a big gift card for a certain amount of time.
It ties into, Sharon, what we were just talking about personalization and finding
Mhm.
something that is really about that resident, right? And so I think that's where it's like, don't offer just one move-in gift if you wish, or a special for everybody, right? Like, let's not get caught up in the fair housing, line that we always say, but maybe there's three different options that they get to choose from, right? And they pick which one
Exactly.
fits them. Because then they also feel like they're owning it and they have some ownership in it, and they get to make that choice. So I love that. I would take a HelloFresh box any day.
Yes.
Could definitely use that, especially moving
There's
in
a
your.
Factor one. There's so many now that are out in the marketplace, but I would be
Yep,
delighted to not have to think about what we're gonna cook for dinner.
100%.
But
Yep.
but could hear in my ears people saying, "What about fair housing?" Sorry about that. I'm recovering. But yeah, the idea that there is a menu that people can choose from does
That's right.
not mean that we are steering people to one. All the menu items are sort of valued equally. You find out what's
Correct.
really important to someone. Really, I love the idea of doing things that create people becoming grounded in the community.
Yeah,
That's when
for
it's
sure.
harder to leave. You
That's
like
right.
your
You're
friend
attached.
Joe, you like your coffee shop, you like
Yep.
the fun events you go to. Why would you move? Moving's a pain.
That's right. And then that to tie it in, you have really good maintenance because our last or our final new host here that we're talking about today is Chris Carmonica, and he has an inaugural podcast called Beyond the Work: Tales from Multifamily Maintenance. So, and if you have good maintenance, you'll hopefully stay as well. And he's really focusing on all of the things that are important in the industry. He is with Win Properties, and he is a VP of facilities over there. He has an enormous amount of experience. But the first episode dropped today as well. So relatable. Lots of lessons on his first year as a maintenance supervisor. And I believe his first episode will really intrigue you. Happy spouse, happy house. And if you can't relate to that, well, at least I think you can relate to that.
Well,
Uh,
the thing is, he ties that in to the work of being a maintenance supervisor. So we usually think
yes.
of that as, a thing you say at home. But he says, and I don't think I'm stealing his thunder because he says it in like the first two sentences. But the work that we ask people to do, especially if it involves a whole lot of on call hours, you're not the only person being affected by that. We are also affecting somebody's home life and their family life. So it really was such a thoughtful way to think about how to reduce that impact. And it was just a win-win-win, and I loved
Yeah.
it, and I'm going to be a big fan of everything Chris puts out after this. So I really encourage you, don't just make it a maintenance listen. It's a good listen for anyone who's spent any time in this industry. But I'm thrilled that we have these two giants in the industry join the Multifamily Media Network.
Yeah, very, very excited. So, I think we're gonna make sure that if you haven't so far, sign up for our newsletter.
What
Make
are
sure
you
you
waiting
do.
for?
Right, right. So never miss out on important news. You can do our or enter our weekly book giveaway. So just visit multifamilymedianetwork.com and there is a drop down for the weekly book giveaway as well as the newsletter. And if you haven't yet, also follow us on LinkedIn. We do a monthly recap as well so that we get the highlights from the past month. And we would love for you to tag along with us and follow.
Yes, thank you all very much for joining us today. We'll be back again next week with another fun episode of Eight Stories.
Thank you again to Chadwell Supply for sponsoring this episode. Chadwell Supply delivers unforgettable service with next day delivery, online and in person maintenance training, procurement platform assistance to make your ordering simple. Visit chadwellsupply.com/difference to learn how Chadwell Supply will make your day better.